We've all heard about the problems that academically underachieving students face in and out of school. And normally, we take it for granted that those on the other end of the academic spectrum, the high achievers, are doing just fine. But this may not be the case. Here's Dan Ashley with a special guest and some students and parents to look at this issue.
Martin, thanks very much. Always nice to be with you. Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Ashley. Schools in America, as you well know, are judged often by academic performance of their students. And the high-performing high schools are not shy about letting people know how many of their students go on to the Harvards, Yales, and Stanfords of America. So people often think that as long as a student is going to a highly regarded university and doing well academically, that everything else in their life must be fine. But you know, often the case, that is a myth. Research is showing that while these high school students are getting straight A's in many instances, many of them and their families are hurting in a number of other ways, facing different challenges that you might not suspect. And here to discuss this issue is Dr. Denise Pope, a lecturer at the Stanford University School of Education. Dr. Pope specializes in student engagement, curriculum studies, qualitative research methods, and service learning. She is a three-time recipient of the Stanford University School of Education Outstanding Teacher and Mentor Award. Denise Pope, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you here. A lot of qualifications I just outlined. Tell me how you got into this field of endeavor.
Well, I'm actually a former high school English teacher. I taught at the college level as well, and I started with a study looking at how kids were doing well in school, how they were engaged. And unfortunately, I found out that these high-achieving students were actually not paying enough attention to the work they were doing. It was more about getting through the system, getting the grades. And that's what led me to look at some of the other things that were happening. They're getting good grades, but they're suffering mentally, physically. They're not engaged, they're not actually retaining the material, and they're also having some problems with integrity.
Interesting. I have a high school senior, two high school kids actually, high school junior I should say, and another kid in high school. And I know one of them is very, very focused on grades, thinking about college right now, almost to the exclusion of everything else. On one level, I suppose that's a good thing. They're focused on achievement. But on another, that presents, as you suggest, some real challenges in their lives.
Absolutely. And, you know, there's a quote that one of my students has said to me, which is, you don't go to school to learn anymore. You go to get the good grades, which gets you to college, which gets you the great job, and possibly happiness.
And possibly
That's what
happiness.
He says.
Really, the idea we thought of school was education and learning. And that's changed in a lot of kids' minds. You think it's just a means to an end now?
Pretty much that's what they're saying. And they're so busy. They're literally so busy doing homework and all the extra work and all the extracurriculars nowadays that they don't have time to really focus on why they're there in the first place, what it is they're getting out of their education.
Denise, let me ask you this, because I think a lot of people, you know the old I walked 5 miles in the snow to get to school. It was much tougher when I was a kid speech that many of us heard when we were younger. I think the presumption sometimes is that kids today have it much easier. We've got iPods and cell phones and video game systems and cable television and all of that stuff that makes life very comfortable for teenagers often today. You're suggesting that really it isn't necessarily any easier. In some ways, it's harder, perhaps?
It is, and from what we found, well, first of all, there's a population boom right now. So it is harder to get into college because you have more college-bound students than ever before. There's actually a college spot for everyone who's ready to go, but for some reason, these high achievers are only applying to certain schools, and that really gluts the system. So in some sense, they are right. It is harder to get into college than ever before. We also have more opportunities for extracurricular activities than we've ever had before. So these kids are overscheduling outside of school and inside of school with advanced placement and honors classes as well.
So there's plenty of room in college generally, but hey, we've got to go to the right colleges, right? So that's creating a bottleneck in those colleges and universities. But really, there's plenty of room in all of the colleges around the country for every kid that wants to go.
Absolutely. Community colleges have spaces. The state schools have spaces. Those aren't the hot schools. There's a myth that if you go to those schools, you won't be successful. We know that's not true, but that's the myth that's out there.
There is, I agree with you, there is to some degree that myth, but there is also some truth to going to a major university, a prestigious university does help you, doesn't it? That can't be denied.
It can't be denied. It really depends on what you want to do, though. So the choice of college becomes much more about what's the right match for you, and you'd be surprised how many kids just buy into the status. They want to go to Harvard, Stanford, or Yale because it has that name. It might not be the right place for them.
But in the truth of it, you want to teach at Stanford, right? You want to teach at a prestigious university.
Well, and actually for graduate school, and I do teach in graduate school, there is more of a truth that it does matter where you are and who you're studying with. At an undergraduate level, the studies have showed, really, you can write your ticket to just about anywhere from any undergraduate institution. And
as long as you do a good job, you'll be successful as long as you work hard and stay honest. Well, the program you head up at Stanford to deal with this problem is called, interestingly enough, SOS. Tell us what SOS stands for, and what does that program do precisely?
SOS stands for Stressed Out Students. And what we found is a number of these kids who are high-achieving high school students have high levels of stress that are causing some real problems. Our goal is to work with schools and school communities to reduce the stress, both at home, in school, and in the community around college admissions, and to really focus on learning, to focus on improve mental and physical health, and integrity.
Tell me a little bit about the results of this effort in this program. What changes do you see in young people?
Well, we've been around now for 4 years, so we're fairly young, and we've already seen amazing results with the students. There's one school down in the South Bay that says 80% of their kids have said, we have reduced the stress at their school. It can be little things like talking about college as a match, not publishing where kids get into college, little baby steps like that, to much bigger steps. Changing the schedule, putting final exams before winter break instead of after break so kids actually get a break. Having longer periods, more time to reflect. Really cutting back on the busy work, making homework purposeful and doable. So we have a lot of strategies that we do with the schools and with the kids about keeping things in perspective, really figuring out why you're here and what it is you want to learn.
Some of this is common sense, too, as you suggest. You know, letting kids have a real break, not forcing them to study and cram for exams during a brief vacation that they so desperately need. I know, as a parent, I'm often frustrated when they're in that position, that they don't get a real break.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the title of your book, Doing School, how we are creating a generation of stressed out, materialistic, and miseducated students. That's a strong book title, and it's a strong statement. How are we creating these students?
Well, part of it is this frenzy, this sort of myth that everything is about grades and test scores. We have No Child Left Behind and a big focus on testing as the main form of assessment. So part of this creation of stressed out kids is the push to get the grades and the test scores without really looking at the learning. That's why I say they're miseducated, because they know how to do school. They know how to jump the hoops. They know how to cover their behinds. They know how to play the game, schmooze the people, but they're not actually paying attention to what they're learning and how they're learning.
So that's why you say they're being miseducated?
That's exactly right.
What do they leave school with? That philosophy?
Unfortunately, they leave school with this notion that it's not, the end in sight is more important to the means. So you do what you can, by hook or by crook often, to get the grades and test scores you need. So if you cheat your way through high school, you often find you have to cheat your way through college. And it's not a big step then to look at some of the CEOs and the businesses that we've also seen that have been in the news that have the problems with integrity as well.
Well, if you're not disciplined on the small things, you won't be disciplined on the big things. And if you cut corners, you cut corners.
Precisely. And it's not like they know that cheating is not wrong. They know that. But they feel they have no other choice. If you've got a Spanish test and a physics problem set and an English essay and they're all due and you're getting home at 9 o'clock from all the United Nations and fall practice, you're pressured to cut those corners.
Sure. What are the numbers on this? I mean, how widespread and rampant is this?
Unfortunately, it's very rampant. We now are at about 75% of all students, high school students nationwide, are chronically disengaged. That same number.
Let me stop you. 75% chronically disengaged. What does that mean?
That means that they are not learning the material. They are literally going through the motions. They call themselves robo students. So you either have the really bright kids who we think are doing great, who are so overscheduled and have to do school and kind of cheat their way through, and then you've got the other kids who look at that system and say, forget it, I'm not even going to attempt to try, and they opt out. So that's chronically disengaged. They're both sides of the spectrum are disengaged.
The high-performing student and the low-performing student disengaged, but for different reasons.
Exactly.
And different frustrations.
And that same number, about 75%, are the ones who cheat on a regular basis.
And those are the high-performing students, I would imagine, because the low-performing students aren't really that concerned about their grades.
Well, they're both cheating in some sense. The high-performing students are cheating because they have so much homework, so much to do, they've got to cheat. And there's a lot more pressure on them. They feel there's a lot more to lose. The low achieving kids we also find are cheating because that's just how they're getting through the system. Otherwise you fail out of school. So they're cheating their way as well.
Just to hang in there.
Exactly.
Whose fault is this? Did we do this, the parents? Did the school system do it? Did the kids do it? Did the media do it? Who did this?
Yes to all. It's really a combination. Unfortunately, it's the system, and everyone's feeling trapped right now. They feel they've got to do this to get the grades to get in. The parents feel like they don't want to have slackers. They've got to push. But a lot of times they're not really listening to their kids. They're pushing them for the wrong reasons, and they're not noticing the real health issues that are going on right under their noses. The teachers too, the media too. Anytime that we talk about the Harvards and the Stanfords and the elitism and how we've got to do this to compete with our other countries, it's actually sending the wrong message. You want to compete in a global economy by creating people who are honest, who have a love of learning, who really know how to think critically and solve problems out of the box. We're not getting that. We're getting a bunch of people who are learning by memorizing and spitting back and trying to play the game.
And there's a coarseness that's taken place too, I think, sort of a cynicism. And you see it even in young people now.
Absolutely. Even as young as fourth graders. You know, school is useless. When are we ever going to have to learn this again? Everybody cheats. Everybody plays the game this way. So I've got to do that too.
Do you think, is this only going to get worse? Are we making any progress in this regard?
I feel, I'm a glasses half full person. I feel we are absolutely making progress.
Because we're aware of it now.
We are starting the national dialogue. More and more people, the media is helping us in this sense. More and more people are understanding. And they know in their gut, you know, how many suicides is it going to take? Sure. How many kids cheating their way through is it going to take? So people want it to stop, and we're trying to figure out, even with the college admissions folks, how to get this to turn around.
Let me just birdwalk for a second. Something just flashed into my mind. I remember hearing and reading many years ago about the pressure on Japanese kids particularly. The enormous weight of performance pressure on them to advance competitively. Are we a little bit more like that model now where we weren't before?
We are. We are. And what's even more interesting is Japan realized that was a problem, and they've started to cut back. Our kids have about 40% more homework in high school in certain subjects than their Japanese counterparts.
Is that true?
Yes.
Interesting. All right. Thanks, Denise. More from you in just a moment. But we have with us a select group of high school students along with either their mother or their father. And these students are in advanced placement, or AP courses as they're often called. Advanced placement courses are very intense, highly challenging courses in subjects like math, language, arts, and science. And if a student goes on to college, he or she receives college credit after completing the course and achieving a passing score on the AP exam. So that's what's at stake. That's the lure of the AP course. Let's have our advanced placement students and their parents react to what Dr. Pope has been saying here. Welcome, all of you. Nice to have you with us. Thank you for being here. I'm going to start with you, Mom, Colleen, there in the back. Tell me a little bit about what you heard Denise Pope say about what's going on with young people. Do you find that true with your child?
Well, I find with actually more of Kate's friends, I see the high stress for the must have the A, like completely losing their mind over a project. And Kate's very social, and she ends up being kind of a point counterpoint for them, like, okay, you know, breathe, you can get through this, you can do this. But when I see it for Kate, I really see that Kate works very hard. Kate's doing a couple of AP classes, and there isn't room in the system. For instance, we had some major things going on in the house. My brother died at the beginning of the year at 52. Yeah, and it was a problem that Kate missed school. And there was, you know, there's the, well, it looks like she's, you know, we're having a pattern of absence and things like this. And it was kind of like, well, there's actually, she's been ill, and then there was a death, and then there was this, and it was like, well, I don't think so. And I thought, you know, not only the pressure of school, but then the pressure of attending, whether you're ill or there's something major going on. So it's like, what about the person? What about the child, you know?
I remember the dirty looks we got when we took our kids out for early, and it was second grade, and they were concerned. It's going to be okay. They're going to survive this. Kate, let me ask you, why did you decide it was important for you to take advanced placement courses?
Well, all the courses I'm interested in, the AP courses I'm in, I'm really passionate about. And a lot.
What are they? Just so we know.
AP Literature and AP Spanish Literature. Right. And so a lot of the kids in the classes, I feel, are just taking the class to get the credit. But like we talked a lot of the classes like test preparation, and I just kind of sit through that part and go, I don't care about the test. Like I don't understand why I'm doing the test prep when like I'm taking the test because I'm kind of obligated to, but ultimately if I don't pass the AP test it doesn't matter because that's not why I'm taking the class.
So you are truly not in an AP class to get the college credit, to get the prestige that goes with that, and to maybe give yourself a leg up. You just like the material.
Exactly. I mean, I just, like with Spanish, I really love languages, so like all I want to do is study languages, and that includes English, so that English and the Spanish literature just help me pursue what I want to study in college, and that's really why I'm taking them.
You must be in the minority, though? Most of your colleagues in AP courses are doing it for different reasons, you think?
Well, I think so, but I have no real way of knowing. Like, I mean, the people I talk to are generally doing it so that they get into a better college, but I don't think that drives me at all particularly.
And your motivation is certainly very interesting and admirable, but do you think it's always wrong that they want to do it just to advance their college careers?
No.
Not necessarily. They're just ambitious.
Yeah, I don't think it's wrong at all. I just think it's kind of twisted that they have to be that way. I think it's more of an obligation to try to get into like Harvard or Yale as opposed to just saying, I'm studying what I want to study and I'll end up going to like a state university that isn't as highly regarded as an Ivy League school, but is still a good school.
All right. Mom, Kate has a good head on her shoulders. You must be very proud. Let me ask you, Barry, in the back. You're Julian's dad.
Yeah.
First question, just react to what you've heard here. Is this what you see in Julian's life, too, or his colleagues' life? Are you concerned? You obviously want Julian to make good grades. You want him to go to a decent college. I mean, let's be honest, we all want that for our kids. You want him to have a good career. But where are the limits? Where do you know to pull back on the reins or not apply as much
it's
pressure?
complicated and it's hard. I agree with pretty much everything that's been said, and I've seen stress in my own son and have it be very challenging and difficult this past 2 years. But it's complicated because he's the type of student that mainly takes AP classes because he's interested in the subject also, and he's not doing it just to get into a good college. But there is that stress, and some of it I think comes from us too, that you can't ignore the testing. You can't just do it because you're interested. You do have to pay attention to the hoops that you have to jump through, and there's always that balance of how much jumping through hoops and how much are you really learning here. He's done very well in managing that balance, but I get the impression from him is that he thinks most of the students around him could care less about real learning, and they're just doing it to go to college.
And it's a difficult challenge because the end game is important. We cannot deny. And do you think you'd be? Are you a bit stressed when you see Julian stressed? Does it
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
Would you be more stressed if he was a poor student and worried about his future?
That's a good question. Probably.
Yeah. It's an interesting double-edged sword for us as parents, isn't it? I know my oldest kid grinds away at school and gets very intense about it, and I've told him, as you have, just do the best you can. It's not life or death. Just do the best you can. We're proud of you, and I appreciate the effort that you're making. But at the same time, if he was not doing well, I'd have a different set of stresses on me, worried about him. So we want the best for them. We want them to work hard. We want them to be ambitious and go to great schools. But at the same time, only to a certain price.
Right. And it's that balance that's hard. It really is. And it has gotten much, much worse in my perception over the last 20, 30 years. I mean, it is a different experience than
when we
I
were
recall it by far, by many magnitudes.
Right.
So.
Julian, let's talk about that for a second. Are you stressed out in these AP classes? I mean, do you feel like you're a stressed out young man?
Well, especially last year, it was very frustrating to me.
What year are you, forgive me?
I'm a senior.
You're a senior, okay.
So last year, my junior year, I started with 4 AP classes, which ended up being way too many, but and I ended up dropping 2 of them because
4's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's pretty intense.
It's a lot, and it pretty much boils down to that one late night where you've got all this work to do in the morning. You're just asking yourself, why am I doing this? I'm not going to absorb any of this, the information which I love. The classes I take, I really enjoy most of them. But when so much piles up on you, you lose that interest and you lose that passion about it. So
it's a great point.
Yeah, and
takes the fun out of it sometimes.
Yeah,
the joy out of it.
Completely. And the focus no longer is what you're learning. It's the end game. It's the grade, or it's the AP test score, or something like that. And I think that for 80%, 90% of students, that's where it is.
Sure.
It's the end game, and that's really frustrating.
And there's another reality, isn't there, Julian? If you take, if you sign up for 4 AP courses and you make C's or D's, you know what everybody will say? Well, he didn't belong in an AP course. What was he doing? So there's the pressure. If you're going to take the course and step up to the plate, you got to swing for the fences a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, you're read by your transcript at the end of 4 years, which is another depressing idea. Half these people never know what I'm like or what Kate or Kyle are like. Just going to be the piece of paper at the end, and then at that point you think, what's the point of all this? Why do I want to do that?
I heard a great line, however, the other day, it was in a movie I saw the other day, which I thought was actually a very good line. We do what we have to do so that we can do what we want to do, which I thought was a very profound statement, actually. Frank, let me go to you in the back there. You are Kyle's father. Tell me about what you see in the home because of Kyle's strong scholarship at school.
I see a lot of studying, too much studying in my opinion, 5 hours a night, sometimes getting up early in the morning. With 4 AP classes, it's much harder than my college studies years ago, and I think it's sad because it seems like they don't really have an opportunity to have a fun childhood. It's all work, and you've got the rest of your life to work, and I just think it's way overdone.
Tell us about it. Isn't that the truth? No, it's true. I feel the same way sometimes about my oldest son. I must tell you, I feel like he studies hours and hours a night and is very stressed out about it. Were you a good student when you were a kid?
Yeah, particularly the math. I was very strong in math, straight A's. I can't hardly help him with his math.
It's that much harder and that much more intense.
Yeah, granted it's been quite a few years ago, but still, the work is just incredible.
But there's no question in your mind, it's harder now for these kids. They're working much harder.
No question at all.
And what do they, I know what they gain potentially, admission to a good college and et cetera, what we've talked about today. What do they lose doing that in your judgment?
Their childhood, in my opinion.
Really? Let me ask you, Kyle, do you agree with what he's saying? Do you feel like...
No.
You like it? Say it, that's fine.
Right,
Terrific,
well,
tell us.
I mean, in my opinion, I've enjoyed, it's been an up and down roller coaster, really. I mean, I hate to get corny on you, but I mean, I've been playing a numbers game, okay? I've mapped it all out. Starting sophomore year, I mapped out the whole thing.
You're a senior now?
Yeah, I'm a senior now, second semester. And I mean, really, I figured, okay, if I take 4 AP courses, I can get C's and B's, and they'll all weigh to B's and A's. It'll be easier, because I can get 70% on assignments, and it'll just be simpler to pull the grades in those courses, maybe even get A's. But it did put me into depressive mood swings and extreme mood swings, and it took a physical and mental toll on me. I mean, I'd stop at 7-Eleven on the way home and buy a Red Bull and a Rockstar, and
just to keep yourself up.
Yeah, or take a no-dose or whatever, just to no, not even to keep I could stay up I could stay up all night. My dad knows. You could ask him. But the caffeine really keeps that edge that you need. I mean, I guess it's like crack now or something. I mean, it's like everybody, you got to have your caffeine if you want you can stay up, but if you want the edge and you want to really be focused, yeah, man, I mean, the caffeine.
Yeah, but Kyle, what is it you're shooting for? What's the point of all this? Okay. I mean, I admire the work ethic to a degree, but what's the point for you?
Okay, well, I've actually already achieved one of the goals that I've been shooting for, and a lot of pressure sort of came off my shoulders. I received a full scholarship to UCLA.
Congratulations.
Just recently. Yeah, thank you. Through the Army. Army, I want to do Marine Corps, but Army offered me a full 4-year scholarship to UCLA.
That took some stress off your dad, by the way.
Well, yeah, certainly. Hopefully, dad, new car. All right. Anyway, no, but and also, I mean, I love the ROTC programs, and that's why I worked hard, because I don't want to go in as a grunt to the military. I've been wanting to do the military for as long as I was a little boy playing with the little toys. And the best way to do it, in my opinion, is to either go to Annapolis or do Naval or Army ROTC, and they'll pay for all my college. I already know I want to do it. I mean, I cut my own hair. I just made this haircut because I want to do it. It's my statement. Like, this is what I want to do for 20 years until I get my pension. And I'll be retired at the age of 42.
They're going to make you take out that earring when you go into
Oh, certainly. I got them all done beforehand.
Frank, let me ask you, you must be very proud, while you're concerned about how much stress he puts on himself. You must be proud to have a kid who seems to know what he wants at a young age and is fairly focused.
Yeah, of course. I encourage what he wants as his dreams for his life. Yeah.
Let me ask you the same question I asked Barry. If he was less focused, if he was drifting as a lot of kids do you think you'd be even more worried about him than you are?
Yes.
So that's a tough challenge for parents, isn't it? I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, we want our kid to have great childhoods and be happy, and we surely do that. But the truth of the matter is, I think many of us would be more stressed if our kids were floundering. Do you think, let me ask any of you guys and jump in, would you know friends, you have friends that are drifting, that really don't have much of a chance to get to college, or maybe, unlike Kyle, has no idea what they want to do when they grow up and get older? That's pretty stressful, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly.
Tell me about some of your friends that you know aren't going to make it to college or just have no idea what they're doing.
Well, I mean, for some people, I mean, the system, I think it selects for certain qualities, you know, for ambition, for an ability to jump through the hoops that, you know, it puts out for it, it puts out for you. And a lot of kids, some of my friends just can't do that because of, I mean, divorce is a big issue. You know, if I have some of my friends' parents have divorced, and that affects them pretty strongly, and they're disadvantaged compared to other students. You know, and that's not taken into account.
And disadvantaged, not necessarily socioeconomically, but maybe something going on in the home.
There's a lot of different factors that affect that.
Kyle, jump in.
And I mean, I have to say, I come from a divorced parent background, and it really comes down to, you got to really, I mean, religion helped me, like the Presbyterian Church. I just had to find it in myself to identify the weaknesses that come along with having divorced parents. I mean, I'll circle right back to the disadvantaged kids. But, you know, I used it and I flipped it around to my advantage. You know, I get more Christmas presents. You know, I get a nice drive down to Menlo Park in Stanford University, or where my mom lives. It's a nice reflection period, you know. But a lot of kids, they don't find that direction until a lot later in life. I mean, I've had probably every, you know, close to every disadvantage thrown at me that from financial to emotional to anything you could name. You know, I've probably had thrown my way. And I've had to take it all, or as much as I have been able to, and turn it around and see the positive. And that's the only way I've gotten through it, you know?
And that's the truth. Yes, sir.
Just saying, many kids can't do that, though. And the system, the way I see it, does, you know, is it creates problems for students. It makes their lives worse. It doesn't make it better. It doesn't compensate for any of these emotional or social problems that they're having. And I think in my own son, it kind of has beaten the joy of learning out of him over time. And that's this high competition and get in the college system. It does not really encourage the joy of learning. Yeah. And it just...
Do you think that's a permanent state, or you doubt it, just a phase at the moment?
Yeah, once I get some breathing room, I hope it'll come back. You know?
All right, and let me go back to Denise Pope from Stanford. First, I know you want to make a comment. Let me first ask you to react to the different but yet at times similar comments these young people made about their educational experience. What did you hear when you heard what they were saying?
I heard very typical to the students that we study at high achieving schools, that there's kids who have mapped it all out like Kyle, who are really playing the numbers game, and I don't fault him at all, but when you say what is lost, they do need to have a childhood. They do need to have time for reflection. They do need to have a love of learning. If you lose that love of learning, if you lose that passion, you are not going to become a successful leader, the kind of citizens who we need to really run this world. And I applaud them for being passionate and taking classes that they're passionate about, and I know, as Kate said, that that's not the norm, that a lot of the kids are really just playing the numbers game. But I think there's a false dichotomy that it has to be either you're a slacker and you're getting bad grades, or you're this crazy person running around like a chicken with their head cut off. There really is a middle ground, and that's what we're looking for.
And I think the word to describe that middle ground is balance.
Absolutely.
And that's what all of us should try to find in life, because when you after you get out of school and you spend the next 40 years of your life working, you need to find balance as well. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Denise Pope from Stanford. Great to have you with us. We appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
And all of you, moms, dads, and students, thank you guys for being with us. And keep up the good work. Keep the balance. And I have no doubt that this is a very successful young group of people here in front of us. Thank you for being with us. We have learned a lot from what you had to say today. Great insight, great candor and honesty. I truly appreciate it. Thanks so much.